Peace be to you all. This is Abdulmalik. Physician associate, health educator, and endurance athlete. So I just got off from work, so I thought that this would be a good time to talk about the bomb threats that have been going on at HBCUs. For those of you all who may not know, HBCU stands for Historically Black College or University. So it's a unique institution of higher learning. It's unique to America. These were colleges and universities that were established at or shortly after the time of slavery, which ended in the U.S. In 1865 with the Emancipation Proclamation. So they were started because a lot of schools would not, predominantly white schools, or all white schools, would not allow black folks to attend their institutions of higher learning. If they did, they had very strict racial quotas. So in some cases, they would only allow one or two coloreds, which is what we were called back then, to attend their institutions. Many of these HBCUs were established by well-meaning whites. So Howard University, in particular, was established by Colonel Howard, who he fought in the Civil War, and he was obviously on the side of the Union Army. So Howard University was initially called Freeman's College. So a lot of the HBCUs, the names that they have now, are not necessarily the names that they had many years ago, certainly not 2 centuries ago. So, for instance, University of the District of Columbia, it has as its founding date I think it's 1871, if I'm not mistaken, or 1867. It was not initially called the University of the District of Columbia. That's one of my alma maters. It was a college for white women initially, and then there was another college associated with it that was a teachers' union college, and then those two colleges and a couple of others actually merged together to later form the University of the District of Columbia, and then that school got named officially as an HBCU much later. But so the HBCUs have had a slightly different dynamic in formation compared to a lot of the predominant white universities like Georgetown University, GW. There's the sort of history of racism and slavery, and then the Jim Crow era. That did a lot to actually help get some of the best minds consolidated at the HBCUs. Schools like Bethune-Cookman, Morehouse College for Men, Spelman College. There were some really great intellectual luminaries in the black community that went to these schools. Tuskegee Institute. So I personally am very proud of that. I've had really good experiences at HBCUs. So I've got 2 degrees from predominantly white universities and 2 degrees from HBCUs. So I did my first degree at University of the District of Columbia. I graduated with a degree in biology in '94, and then went on to PA school at Howard and graduated in 2000, and went to predominantly white schools for my master's and my doctorate. And for that, I would say that's kind of segues into a comparison. So, some of the pros, I would say, for HBCUs are there is a sense of camaraderie. There's always going to be issues no matter where you go, but you may be more privy to find friends for life at an HBCU if you're black. Not that you won't at predominantly white universities, but you may be more inclined to find that. I found my wife at Howard University. It's 30 years ago. So that's, that was a good thing. And I've had friends and relationships that have fostered for 30 years from HBCUs. If you are black, you may be more privy to find that at an HBCU as opposed to a white university. I started my academic sojourn at Stony Brook University back in 1988, and I think black students comprised less than 3% of the entire campus. And then I was a pre-med student at the time, so the harder my classes got, there were like no black people in those classes. Maybe, yeah, I had zoology, comparative anatomy. I was the only black guy in the class, and that sometimes you just because of the unfortunate dynamics of our society that tend to be race related, you may want to see a familiar face or somebody who's got possibly a familiar background to you. Not that all black guys are the same, but there are certain things from the black American background anyway that may kind of establish a bond between us. And that's like any group. If you're Irish, you see another guy named McConnell or McGregor, you're like, hey, I'm Irish too, or Italian, and that's human nature, in many cases. But I enjoyed my time at HBCUs. My children are going to University of District of Columbia now, and we're saving money. They're doing community colleges first, and then they'll transition into the 4-year programs, Lord willing, inshallah. So you save a lot of money, and that's another factor. HBCUs tend to be significantly less from predominantly white universities in terms of tuition. Howard and certainly UDC is far less expensive than George Washington University or Georgetown University. It may not necessarily be as prestigious. It isn't, and that's fine. If prestige is important to you, then try to go to Ivy League schools, and you can see how that works out for you. Yeah, and the bomb threat was at UDC also. Yeah, so I don't know what's going on with this bomb threat. They still haven't found out who's doing it. I'm sure there's a lot of theories floating around, but Lord willing, everybody will be safe, and no harm will come to the students or staff or the buildings. Maybe it's a fake bomb threat. I don't know. But this is a very interesting thing that's going on now. With what else can I say about HBCUs? Maybe some of the cons, quote unquote, or maybe some of the misgivings one may have. The scores, the standardized scores in HBCUs are not as high as the predominantly white universities. For instance, Georgetown University, I think the average SAT is like close to a 1400, where at Howard it's I think a 1230. UDC it's less than that, and that's across the board with MCAT scores, so medical college aptitudes tests, GREs, LSAT scores, board passage rates, and there's a lot of reasons for this. There is historical racism does play a part in higher education, just like in primary education. Also, a lot of folks that go to HBCUs may be first generation college attendees. That counts. My wife and I attended college. We've prepared our children very well for college. So we started training them on the PSAT, the practice SAT, and the SATs. We sent them to private schools for a while. When you're coming from that background, you're going to be a more competitive applicant. There are more white people from those competitive upper socioeconomic background than there are black folks. That's just the fact of the matter. And that's going to play a role in the scores, especially when it comes to your preparation for standard application test. I got my kids tutors. I was able to afford tutors for them and special test preps, so they could do well. Now, we still decided to go with the community college because I didn't want them taking out student loans like my wife and I did. It doesn't do you any good to make a certain salary and you owe a ton of money with student loans with compounding interest. And that, that's another factor. Unfortunately, a lot of black folks have defaulted on their student loans because we have not had the means to pay them back. It's something that you want to avoid. We've done that more so than a lot of white folks. But that's the nature of that Faustian deal of taking out student loans. So you want to avoid that if you can. But if you think that an HBCU is for you, I'd encourage you to apply. They don't exclude white students. I'm not only a...
Respiratory asking you for. Respiratory asking you for.
Sorry about that. So they don't exclude non-black students. Like I said, I'm a graduate of HBCUs. I also taught. So I had white students when I taught at HBCUs. I didn't treat them any differently than the black students. So you can get an outstanding education. It's like anywhere. It is what you make of it. But that's it for now. I wish you guys the best of success in your positive endeavors. If you have any questions about becoming a PA or a health educator, or any more, you want to know more about my experience at HBCUs, feel free to contact me or just leave a comment or a question in the comment section. All right, take care. Peace.